Maureen Rickards was not the kind of person anyone would suspect of what she did. Born on April 10, 1974, she had met her husband Jeremy in Mali in 1997 when she was just 23. Jeremy was a geologist who had spent decades working across Africa in precious metals. He was described as meek, mild-mannered, and softly spoken. He had given her 27 years of marriage, a home, and a life. In return, she recorded herself beating him on her own phone and kept the footage. The household on St. Martin's Road, Canterbury, was a multi-occupancy property. Other tenants heard shouting. They heard sounds consistent with someone being struck. When neighbors asked Jeremy about his bruising, he said simply that Maureen was in a bad mood. On May 17, 2024, pub staff at a local Wetherspoons noticed heavy injuries on his face. He told them it was a car accident. It was not. In late May and early June, Maureen filmed herself on her phone shouting at Jeremy as he lay confused on the floor. In one clip lasting 15 minutes, he could be heard crying out in pain, begging her to stop. She told him she would kill him. She then told him she had Googled how to do it. She kept the footage on her own device. Jeremy was last seen alive on June 7, 2024. His final phone use was the following day. Detectives believe Maureen murdered him on or around June 8th. He was stabbed 5 times in the chest. 2 wounds penetrated 11 centimeters deep and pierced his heart. His body was stored in a cupboard in her attic room. She purchased cleaning products. Using his bank card on June 20th, she instructed handymen to leave grass cuttings under the garden bushes. That was exactly where his body was later found, wrapped in bin bags. Inside a canvas holdall, concealed beneath the cuttings, she had personally directed them to leave there. She messaged their daughter from Jeremy's phone, claiming he was in Saudi Arabia. When her daughter questioned the writing style, Maureen kept the act going. She later sent a message saying he had taken his own life abroad. That message is what made the daughter report him missing. When police arrived, Maureen asked them, "What body?" Tried at Canterbury Crown Court before Mr. Justice Kerr, she was unanimously convicted of murder on March 13, 2025. After 6 hours of deliberation, on April 9, 2025, she received life imprisonment with a minimum of 22 years. She refused to attend her own sentencing. The judge sentenced her in absence and told her he accepted she had loved Jeremy. He said he did not know why she killed him, and he told her she had to live with that. Jeremy Rickards spent his final weeks bruised, frail, and afraid in a house where he had once built a life. And the woman who put him there filmed it herself. Welcome to True Crime with Tyler. If you enjoy learning about the hidden truths of crime stories, consider hitting that like button and subscribing for more content like this. And please comment below to let me know where you're listening from. Antoinette Sheppard was not the kind of person anyone would suspect of what she did. Born in 1979, she was 44 years old at the time of the act, living in a flat on Bowness Close in the Radford area of Coventry. Her life had unraveled significantly by the summer of 2023. She had alcohol dependence, a history of mental health difficulties, and had recently been left by a long-term partner of 14 years. That partner's teenage nephew, 16-year-old Kieran Spicer, had remained in contact with her. The judge at sentencing would later describe what followed as something that moved from normal to seriously abnormal and wholly disturbing. She had groomed him for her own ends. Her victim was Michael Brady, 74 years old, a retired pensioner from Coventry who suffered from Alzheimer's disease. His family described him as kind, generous, trusting, and gentle. A man who loved to laugh. He had no way of knowing what was waiting for him inside that flat. CCTV captured him entering Sheppard's address shortly after 6 in the evening. On June 18, 2023, Father's Day, he walked in trusting. He did not walk out. What the court heard next was difficult to absorb. Earlier that same evening, the pair had attempted to kill another man in the same flat with the same weapons, a machete and a blue rope. That man talked them down and escaped. The judge stated plainly that had he not done so, he too would have been killed. Michael Brady was not so fortunate. Spicer attacked him with the machete. Sheppard then wrapped the blue rope around his neck and strangled him while he begged for his life. The judge described it as squeezing the life from him. The prosecution established that Sheppard had been exploiting Brady financially for some time prior, having exchanged sex with him for money and knowing he carried bank cards. This was murder for gain, planned and deliberate. After the killing, the pair crammed Brady's body into a large television box they had in the flat, dragged it to an outside shed and locked it away. 10 minutes later, they used his stolen bank card at a nearby shop to withdraw $300. They spent it on alcohol and drugs. Concerned neighbors called police. Officers arrived and found the body in the shed, still inside the box. Sheppard was arrested. Spicer phoned her phone, and when an officer answered, told them, "If you want to speak to me, you will have to find me." He was later located after telling a social worker he had been asked to hide a body. Phone messages recovered from both devices showed them discussing violence against someone in the days before. One message from Spicer read, "I am on one. I'm going to hurt people." Both blamed each other during police interview. The jury rejected both accounts. Tried at Warwick Crown Court before Judge Andrew Lockhart KC. Both were convicted of murder on December 19th, 2023. On February 9th, 2024, Sheppard received life with a minimum of 30 years. Spicer received life with a minimum of 18 years. Michael Brady walked into that flat trusting the woman he knew. He was 74 years old. He had Alzheimer's and he begged for his life. And 10 minutes after it ended, she was at a cash machine spending his money. Constance Marten was not the kind of person anyone would suspect of what she did. Born on May 16th, 1987, she came from an aristocratic English family with generational wealth and social standing. She had met Mark Gordon, an American convicted sex offender, and the two had been living largely off-grid for years. By the time she became pregnant for a fifth time, she kept it entirely secret. On Christmas Eve 2022, she gave birth alone in a hired holiday cottage. The baby was a girl. They named her Victoria. She never had a chance. On January 5th, 2023, the couple's car caught fire on the M61 motorway near Bolton, Greater Manchester. They abandoned it. Left inside was the family cat in a box, around $2,000 in cash, 34 burner phones and a placenta. Police identified the placenta and understood immediately that a newborn was somewhere with two people who had just walked away from a burning vehicle and vanished. A nationwide manhunt began. Over 1,000 Metropolitan Police officers would ultimately be involved in the search for baby Victoria. For 7 weeks, Marten and Gordon evaded every attempt to locate them. They ditched their phones. They avoided using bank cards to the point that they were reported to be starving. They spent hundreds of pounds on taxis traveling from Greater Manchester to Harwich, then to East Ham in London, and on to New Haven. Victoria was glimpsed only once on CCTV in London, briefly visible under her mother's coat, wearing a baby grow that would later be recovered with her body. She was carried in a Lidl bag, in a tent on the South Downs, in temperatures close to freezing. Victoria died in that tent. The prosecution established that the combination of condensation, damp clothing and wet sleeping bags exposed the newborn to extreme cold stress, creating a substantial risk of hypothermia. After she died, both parents were captured on CCTV scavenging in bins for food. Marten had $19,000 in a bank account. They were arrested on February 27, 2023, buying supplies in Brighton. Gordon, when asked where the baby was, said, "What's the big deal?" Police searched for 2 days. They found Victoria wrapped in a pink sheet inside a Lidl bag, concealed beneath dirt and rubbish in a disused shed near an allotment. She was too badly decomposed to establish an exact cause of death. At the Old Bailey, their first jury could not reach a verdict on manslaughter. A retrial was ordered. Using fresh weather data and expert analysis of the conditions inside the tent, prosecutors demonstrated the level of cold stress Victoria had been exposed to. On July 14, 2025, both were unanimously convicted of gross negligence manslaughter. Marten received 14 years. Gordon received 14 years with an extended license period. No remorse has been reported. Victoria was born on Christmas Eve. She died in a tent in the cold because two people who called themselves her parents decided that hiding from authorities mattered more than her life. Polly Murphy was not the kind of person anyone would suspect of what she did. Based in Hornsey Lane Gardens, Highgate, London, she was 42 years old at the time of the act. She had been in a relationship with James Self, also from London. James was 47 years old. His mother, Ash, described him as a gentle man with a lot to live for. Friends noticed he had changed in the months before his death. The change had a name, and that name was Polly Murphy. The relationship had become increasingly volatile in the weeks leading up to November 2023. Court evidence established that Murphy had subjected James to a sustained campaign of physical and emotional abuse that predated the events of that night. Around October 7th, 2023, she threw a phone at his head, giving him a black eye. Text messages recovered from both phones showed her growing more erratic and threatening with each passing week. She told him to watch his back. She told him she would hunt him down. On at least one occasion, she told him she would kill him. His mother knew about the violence. She had watched her son's character change under the weight of it and had no way to stop it. On November 8th, 2023, the couple was staying at the Smugglers Cove Hotel in Hartley Brook Road, Clacton-on-Sea, Essex. That night, inside their hotel room, Murphy subjected James Self to a sustained 2-hour assault. She punched him. She kicked him. She stamped on him. CCTV footage captured her leaving the hotel room. Alone later that night, while James lay motionless on the other side of the door. She did not call for help. She did not return. It was not until 18 hours later that she finally dialed for an ambulance. When she called, she told the handler that James may have a broken leg. In reality, he had been beaten across his entire body for 2 hours. He was taken to hospital. He died there on December 21st, 2023, in his mother's arms. Murphy was initially charged with grievous bodily harm with intent. Following James's death, the charge was upgraded to murder. She remained on remand throughout proceedings. The trial at Chelmsford Crown Court began in November 2025. Over 4 weeks, the jury heard medical evidence, reviewed text messages, and saw the CCTV footage of her leaving the room. The judge, His Honor Judge Christopher Morgan, noted at sentencing that James had responded to her volatility with conciliation. His gentleness had not protected him. It had perhaps made things worse. On January 13th, 2026, Murphy was found guilty of murder. On February 4th, 2026, she was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 15 years. No appeal has been reported. James Self died in hospital 6 weeks after the assault in his mother's arms. His mother said she would never hear his voice again and felt broken in ways she could not explain. His kindness, she said, may have cost him his life. Emma Tustin was not the kind of person anyone would suspect of what she did. She had 4 children of her own and had met Thomas Hughes on the dating website Plenty of Fish in August 2019. Hughes had a 6-year-old son named Arthur Labinjo Hughes from a previous relationship. Arthur's mother was in prison. Thomas Hughes introduced his son to Tustin early, and she later said that she and Arthur were friends straight away. His teachers at the time reported no concerns. Within a year, Arthur would be dead. When COVID-19 restrictions began in March 2020, Thomas Hughes moved Arthur permanently into Tustin's home in Cranmore Road, Solihull, cutting him off from his grandparents, his school, and every adult outside that household who might have seen what was happening. What followed was a prolonged campaign of starvation, isolation, salt poisoning, and repeated physical assault. Arthur was forced to stand in the hallway alone for hours without water. He was made to sleep on the hard floor without a mattress. He was barred from the food and activities the other children enjoyed. Audio and video clips, recorded on Tustin's phone in the final weeks of Arthur's life, showed him scarcely able to articulate his words. By the time he was killed, he could no longer support his own weight. On June 15, 2021, Tustin forced Arthur to stand by the door for 6 hours at a friend's house while she socialized inside. When they left, Arthur collapsed on the floor. Neither Tustin nor Hughes helped him. The following morning, Arthur appeared on CCTV footage, visibly weak and in pain, struggling to lift his own bedclothes. Thomas Hughes told Tustin to just end him. On June 16, 2021, Emma Tustin carried out a fatal assault. She violently shook Arthur and repeatedly banged his head against what was likely the hallway wall. She then took a photograph of the unconscious child on her mobile phone as he lay dying in the hallway. She sent the image to Hughes. She waited 12 minutes before calling. In 1999, she first called Hughes. She then lied to paramedics and police, claiming Arthur had fallen and hit his head 5 times on the floor. By the time emergency services arrived, Arthur was malnourished, covered in more than 130 bruises, and suffering a catastrophic head injury. He was 6 years old. He died that day. Tried at Coventry Crown Court. Tustin was convicted of murder on December 1st, 2021. She received life with a minimum of 29 years. Thomas Hughes was convicted of manslaughter and received 21 years. The case prompted a national safeguarding review and changes to child protection legislation in England. While on remand, inmates threw salt at Tustin in reference to how she had poisoned Arthur. Arthur Labinjo Hughes was 6 years old. He spent his final weeks standing in hallways, sleeping on floors, and being denied food while the adults in the house ate beside him. She photographed him dying and sent it as a message. March 2013 afternoon, Cambridgeshire. A quiet rural town hid a storm waiting to break. Behind ordinary doors, what looked like charm and confidence would soon erupt into horror. A woman walking the streets with a smile, a knife hidden beneath her coat, and one sudden decision that would turn strangers into victims. Joana Dennehy, once known for her striking personality and bold attitude, now stood accused of a killing spree born from thrill, control, and pure malice. How could a single woman turn the world into her hunting ground in the blink of an eye? This was not self-defense nor panic, but calculated violence that left families devastated. Dennehy's cold laughter, her chilling selfies after the stabbings, and her deliberate choice of random victims revealed a darkness few had ever witnessed. Joana Dennehy, 29 years old, in 2013, in the usually quiet towns of Peterborough and Cambridgeshire. A shocking series of attacks unfolded over a single spring, leaving communities in fear and sending shockwaves across the country. Joana Dennehy, a young woman whose outward appearance seemed ordinary to friends and neighbours, became one of the most notorious spree killers in modern British history. Over the course of March and April 2013, she murdered 3 men and attempted to kill a 4th, using a knife in calculated and cold-blooded attacks. To those who knew her, Joana appeared reserved, unassuming and perhaps troubled, but no one could have imagined the level of violence she was capable of. Her actions were deliberate, methodical, and terrifyingly controlled. Over the weeks, she targeted men she encountered, approaching them under seemingly ordinary circumstances before launching vicious attacks that would end in stabbing and death. Her victims had no chance to defend themselves, and her methodical planning made each attack more chilling than the last. The first murder occurred on the 17th of March, 2013, when 31-year-old Lukasz Slaboszewski was attacked and fatally stabbed. His life was cut short in a violent, unprovoked assault. Just days later, on the 19th of March, 48-year-old Kevin Lee became her next target, also stabbed to death in a similarly brutal manner. The final confirmed murder occurred on the 21st of March, when 56-year-old John Chapman was killed. Each attack showed Dennehy's methodical approach, carefully choosing victims, isolating them, and striking with lethal precision. A 4th man survived an attack, providing crucial testimony that would later aid investigators in piecing together the sequence of crimes. Police investigations quickly followed. CCTV footage, forensic evidence, and witness accounts revealed the cold, Calculated nature of Dennehy's spree. She had acted with deliberate intent, her calm demeanor during the assault striking witnesses as unnervingly detached. Detectives described her as a predator who planned her attacks meticulously, striking terror into ordinary streets that had previously seemed safe. At Cambridge Crown Court, prosecutors laid bare the chilling details of her crimes. Witnesses recounted the horror experienced by survivors and the families of the deceased. The judge described Joana Dennehy's acts as ruthless, cold, and utterly devoid of empathy, highlighting the danger she posed to society. Her spree was not impulsive, but the product of deliberate planning and calculated violence. Following a lengthy trial, Joana Dennehy was sentenced to a whole life order, ensuring she would never be released. Her crimes, cold and calculated, secured her place as one of the UK's most notorious modern female killers. Families, investigators, and the public alike were left grappling with the scale of her cruelty, a stark reminder that danger can strike even in the most ordinary communities. The story of Joana Dennehy serves as a haunting lesson. Violence can erupt suddenly, and cold calculation, when combined with lethal intent, can devastate lives in moments, leaving lasting scars on both families and society. Gareeca Gordon was not the kind of person anyone would suspect of what she did. Born in 1992, she was 28 years old at the time of the act. She was living in shared accommodation in Birmingham with her friend and former flatmate Phoenix Nets, also 28. The two had known each other for some time. When Gordon expressed a desire to change the nature of their friendship into something romantic, Phoenix said no. That rejection is the entire reason Phoenix Nets is dead. Phoenix Nets was a young woman living her life. She had friends, plans, and a future. Nothing in her relationship with Gordon had ever suggested what was coming. She had simply turned down a romantic advance from someone she trusted enough to share a home with. That should have been the end of it. It was not. Gordon fatally stabbed Phoenix at their shared address in Birmingham. What followed was an attempt to dispose of the body that stretched across counties and required a degree of premeditation that is difficult to process. Gordon set fire to part of Phoenix's remains. She then dismembered the body and divided it between two suitcases. She loaded those suitcases into a vehicle and drove toward the Forest of Dean in Gloucestershire, more than 80 miles from Birmingham. She was stopped by police en route. When officers searched the vehicle, they found the suitcases. Inside one was a partially burned torso. Phoenix Nets had been reduced to components, loaded into luggage, and was being transported away from the city where she had lived. The forensic process that followed was methodical and thorough. The evidence against Gordon was overwhelming. She had left traces of herself on the suitcases, on the remains, and along the route she had driven. There was no plausible alternative explanation, no co-defendant, no one else to point to. Gordon had acted entirely alone from the moment Phoenix rejected her to the moment police opened those cases by the roadside. At Bristol Crown Court, Gordon pleaded guilty on April 21st, 2021. There was no trial. She admitted what she had done. On May 4th, 2021, she was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 23 years and 6 months. The judge made clear that the manner in which she had attempted to conceal what she had done significantly aggravated the sentence. Phoenix Nets said no to a romantic relationship. That was all she did. And the woman she shared a home with stabbed her, set her on fire, cut her apart, packed her into suitcases, and drove her body out of the city because she said no. Lucy Letby, 31 years old at the time of her crimes. Between 2015 and 2016, in the calm, brightly lit corridors of the Countess of Chester Hospital, a series of horrifying events unfolded that would shock the UK and leave families devastated. Parents entrusted their most vulnerable children, newborn infants, into the care of professionals, expecting warmth, safety, and compassion. But in the heart of the neonatal unit, Lucy Letby turned trust into terror. committing acts that would make her one of the most notorious female killers in modern British history. To colleagues and families, Lucy appeared dedicated, meticulous, and caring. She smiled at parents, reassured worried mothers, and maintained the appearance of a committed neonatal nurse. On the surface, she blended seamlessly into the daily rhythm of the hospital, never drawing suspicion. But behind this professional facade lay calculated cruelty. Over months, infants under her care experienced unexplained collapses, seizures, and sudden deaths. Initially, these tragedies were thought to be natural complications or unfortunate coincidences. Yet patterns began to emerge, revealing something far more sinister. Investigators later uncovered that Lucy had deliberately poisoned and suffocated multiple babies. The realization was horrifying. A nurse, entrusted with life itself, had become the source of unimaginable harm. Hospital staff recalled the shock when unusual incidents clustered around the same individual. Each child brought into the unit was potentially at risk, and the very place meant to safeguard life had been transformed into a scene of death. Police meticulously gathered evidence. Hospital records, patient histories, and surveillance footage painted a chilling picture of premeditated actions. Toxicology reports confirmed the presence of harmful substances in infants who had shown sudden and unexplained symptoms. Witness statements revealed subtle but consistent manipulations and suspicious behavior by Letby, showing how she evaded suspicion while harming those she had sworn to protect. At Chester Crown Court, prosecutors laid bare the details of the crimes. The jury heard harrowing accounts from parents, colleagues, and medical experts, detailing the suffering endured by tiny, defenseless lives. Lucy Letby's actions were described as cold, deliberate, and calculated, betraying every expectation of care, empathy, and trust. She showed no visible remorse, and the impact of her crimes on grieving families was profound and permanent. After a lengthy and exhaustive trial, Lucy Letby was convicted of multiple counts of murder and causing serious harm to infants. On the 21st of August 2024, she was sentenced to life imprisonment. The court described her as one of the most notorious modern female killers in the UK, a figure whose crimes represented a chilling abuse of trust and a profound betrayal of the most vulnerable. Outside court, families expressed heartbreak and disbelief. One mother said, "We handed her our babies, believing they would be safe. We never imagined this could happen. Nothing can prepare you for this kind of horror." The case of Lucy Letby sent shockwaves across Britain, a grim reminder that even in places of care and healing, danger can hide behind the mask of professionalism and kindness. Frankie Smith was not the kind of person anyone would suspect of what she allowed to happen. She was 19 years old at the time, living in Cayley, West Yorkshire, with her 16-month-old daughter, Star Hobson. Star had been born on May 19, 2019. She was a healthy, lively child. Family members who cared for her described her as a different Star entirely. Bright, happy, and thriving. She was that Star when she was away from her mother's flat. Inside it, she was something else. Because inside it was Savannah Brockhill. Brockhill was 28 years old and worked as a security guard. She was also an amateur boxer with a physically powerful build. She entered Star's life through her relationship with Frankie Smith, and from that point, the abuse began almost immediately. Family members observed bruising on Star within weeks of Brockhill's arrival and made at least 5 separate referrals to Bradford Social Services from January 2020 onward. Star's great-grandmother personally reported seeing Brockhill slam-choke the toddler and warned that the situation risked becoming another Baby P case. Social Services dismissed it following reassurances from Smith. The reports went nowhere. Hours of footage recorded on Brockhill and Smith's mobile phones was played to the jury at Bradford Crown Court. One clip showed Star falling from a plastic chair while dozing, hitting the floor, too exhausted to react. Brockhill edited that clip with visual effects and comedy, music, and sent it to friends with the caption, "I've laughed so hard. Starr's great-grandfather described her as caught up in the crossfire of their volatile and violent relationship. On September 22, 2020, during the afternoon, Savannah Brockhill inflicted a fatal assault on Starr. She kicked or punched her with what the judge described as massive force, equivalent to the forces associated with a road traffic accident. The blow caused a 2-centimeter laceration to the inferior vena cava, the main blood vessel returning blood to the heart. More than 50% of Starr's circulating blood volume escaped into her abdomen. Starr bled to death internally. Frankie Smith said she was in the toilet. Brockhill claimed Starr had fallen. The jury believed neither of them. At Bradford Crown Court, Brockhill was convicted of murder on December 15, 2021, and received life with a minimum of 25 years. Smith was convicted of causing or allowing the death of a child and received 8 years, later increased to 12 years. By the Court of Appeal for being unduly lenient, Starr was 16 months old. 5 referrals had been made. None resulted in her being removed, and the woman whose job it was to protect her chose to stay in a relationship with the person who was killing her. Karen Matthews was not the kind of person anyone would suspect of what she did. She was 32 years old, a stay-at-home mother of 7 children by 5 different fathers, living on the Moorside estate in Dewsbury, West Yorkshire. On the evening of February 19, 2008, she phoned West Yorkshire Police to report that her 9-year-old daughter Shannon had not come home from school. What followed was the largest missing child investigation the region had seen since the Yorkshire Ripper case. More than 250 officers, 60 detectives, and hundreds of community volunteers were deployed. Karen Matthews stood in front of cameras, appealed for help, and wept for her missing daughter. She was performing every second of it. Shannon Matthews had not gone missing. She had been placed, by arrangement, in the home of Michael Donovan, the uncle of Karen's then-boyfriend, Craig Meehan. Donovan kept Shannon in a flat in Batley Car, just miles from the family home, confined and sedated. The plan had been designed by Karen Matthews for one purpose: to claim the $50,000 reward that had been offered by the public for Shannon's safe return. She had sold her own daughter's freedom for reward money she intended to collect. The performance continued for 24 days. During that time, Karen Matthews gave television interviews, attended community meetings, and led public appeals alongside her neighbor, Julie Bushby, who had organized the search effort in genuine good faith. Detective Constable Christine Freeman later said she had felt unsettled from the beginning. Friends noted Karen laughing off camera when media attention faded. She and her boyfriend were seen playing video games during police visits. The search cost $3.2 million of public money. On March 14, 2008, Shannon was found alive at Donovan's address. She had been there the entire time, sedated with medication, hidden in a space beneath a divan bed. Karen Matthews' reaction when arrested was not relief. It was the unraveling of a plan that had simply run out of time. At Leeds Crown Court in December 2008, Karen Matthews and Michael Donovan were both convicted of kidnap, false imprisonment, and perverting the course of justice. Each received 8 years. Karen served 4 years before her. Released in 2012, she was given a new identity and relocated. She has since maintained in media interviews that she was not involved. Michael Donovan died of cancer in 2024. A documentary, Isaizi Nasan Dani Business Masisul, The Hunt for Shannon Matthews, aired on Amazon Prime Video in August 2025. Shannon Matthews was 9 years old. Her mother put her there, collected the search posters she had printed, stood in front of cameras and cried on demand. Shannon now lives under a lifelong anonymity order. She was 26 years old in 2025.